All right, so really quick, I'm gonna put this back in full screen so you can see better. Okay, so we've done our quick welcome. We're gonna demonstrate quickly. I have some other DLCs in our chat with us in this live recording, and they are gonna kind of demonstrate what it looks like when someone is collaborating in Google Slides. Google Slides is very similar to PowerPoint. It's just Google's version. And the slide decks, you can have as many slides as you want, and you can add your own content. You can use templates. And so I have a template that they're going to jump into in just a moment, and you're going to see them editing live. And so you'll get to see what that looks like. And then we are going to demonstrate how to share that in Google Classroom, and we have directions to do that in Canvas as well. We'll go over some tips and tricks, show you some great examples, and then we're going to give you some resources and time for question and answer. So let's get started.
So Sadie, we have a couple hands raised. Barb has her hand raised as well as
Barb. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Barb.
Yes, I'm sorry to interject here, but on those slides, we need to have access.
Oh no. Okay, is it saying view?
Yeah, on the Lunch and Learn collaborative.
Okay, perfect. Let me go in and edit that really quick for you. Sorry about that. Yes, and so those of you watching, this can happen in your Google Classrooms or your Canvas. And so right now at the top of my screen, this is a great first lesson. It says anyone with a link can view, and I need to just change that to anyone with the link can edit. And so once the participants that are looking at that refresh their tab or their screen, then they should be able to have editing access. And so with that said, I'm going to kind of put this in full screen. It's called Welcome Aboard. It's our first Google slide deck that we're sharing, and hopefully everybody can see that okay. On the slide, what happens is I have an example. So they're just adding their name, a picture, and telling 2 facts about themselves. So 1 or 2 interesting tidbits, it says. And so I can already see Barb is there. And I can see that was on slide 2 and she's jumped down to slide 3. And so you'll see that with students in your classroom as they jump in and start editing slides. If you're watching while they're editing, you'll see little tiny bubbles popping up to see where everyone is. And so I can see that Jenny has already added an image, and I can go straight to her slide. And so it'll be the same for your students if you are doing this synchronously. And Melanie, I see you have a question. Go ahead and unmute and ask.
Yeah, so I actually just learned this. So where you pointed to those little circle or bubbles that you referred to at the top, if you have a lot of people and they're working on different slides or documents, if you click on any of those people because you want to find them, it takes you directly to where that person is working in the slide deck or in the Google Doc that you might be collaborating on.
That's amazing.
I
don't think
love
I realized that.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Melanie. That's an excellent tip. So I want to see where Jenny is, and it takes me right to where her cursor is. That's fantastic. I love it. So that's great to use. And just keep in mind, you don't have to do this live with your students. If you have a collaborative slide deck, this one's just a fun getting to know you slide. You could use this at the beginning of a school year or just when you're restarting things like, hey, let's all just tell an interesting thing you've done since you've been at home and you haven't been at school. And so you can, instead of having students add photographs, they can go to a Google search, and we'll demonstrate that later how they can do that. But it's just a really quick way. You can post the link to wherever you normally post assignments, and you can go back and check that later. You don't have to be live and watching them as they're completing it. So just keep that in mind, that the nice thing about this is anybody can collaborate at any time. All right, and I can see Laura's typing in something about herself. Thank you, Tom. Look, I even have some participants. Woohoo! Thanks, Jackie. This is fun. Okay, so really quickly, I just want to mention, so I'm on Barb's slide. And so this is one of the first little tips and tricks we're going to show you. It's a really great way to give feedback. So you're most of the time not going to have all of your students in a Google Meet completing a Google slide deck, a Google slide deck like this all at the same time. So what you can do is use the comment feature. And the comment feature in Google is found in Google Slides, Google Docs, Google Drawings. And so all of their, most of their platforms, you can go in and create comments. So I want to comment on something that Barb has done. So I can click either on her entire slide over here on the left, or I can even narrow it down to a single word and I can add a comment. And so there are two ways to do that, but you can see once I've selected her word, there's a new little speech bubble that pops up. It has a small plus sign in there. It says add comment. So I can click on this and I can start typing Barb's name with an @ symbol. So as soon as I put an @ symbol, it's going to tag her so that she'll also end up getting an email notification since she has email. And so I can click that and it's going to add, and I'm going to say, Barb, great work adding this detail. I could even say something like, can you think of a new vocabulary word, right? Or a synonym. I can give her some very specific feedback about what she's typing, and I can check mark this assign button and then click assign. And so that's a really great feature. And so what I would love is, Jenny, can you run in on Tanya's really quick? And I want to show how students can also comment on one another's slides as well. And so Jenny, she is going right now. You can see I have both of their little bubbles. You can see on Tanya's slide. And so Jenny, as a student, is going to go in and comment on Tanya's slide. And so she didn't tag Tanya, and that's fine. You can just have students go in and just type comments and provide peer feedback to each other and add comments. And so I do caution before you begin doing something like that, that you set up some expectations with students. You need to have a good conversation about what a positive message looks like and what words we can and can't use, what it looks like, what it sounds like when we create good comments and give good feedback. And so you might even put a slide deck, add a slide to your slide deck that just sets up those expectations of how we can comment, and even with a little tutorial. Melanie, I would love for you to add. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Barb and I just worked alongside a teacher this morning, and I think this was more of a vocabulary or sort of language in this new normal. And notice where it says resolve next to the comment. So the students kept closing these comments because they felt like when it was back and forth with the teacher, if they had done what they were asked, they kept resolving it. And the teacher felt like they were deleting it. So I think also make sure that you have that language with your students. If you don't want them to resolve anything, maybe it's something that you say as the teacher, that the teacher will always be the one to resolve comments. And it wasn't like they were doing anything wrong. They probably just don't understand this comment feature here.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah, I think it's really important to make sure as teachers, we understand the process and practice that with our colleagues or our DLCs so that we can have an opportunity to really understand how it works before sharing that with our students and setting up those procedures. And I think that's an excellent point. And you'll notice Jenny and Tanya replied to Jenny. So she was able to click on here. And I can even do that as well. So I can click on the last comment and I can say, students, that is a great conversation, right? And maybe I can pose another question for them, and then I can reply and kind of keep the digital asynchronous conversation going with them. And so as Melanie said, if we resolve something or a student resolves, we have this other speech bubble at the top, and it's another way you can add a comment. But up here in the top right corner, you'll see another speech bubble. And instead of having a plus sign on it, it looks like it has like text on it, right? It's the 3 little lines. And so if I click that, I can actually open the comment history and see where all of the comments have been. And even if they've been resolved, they still show up there. And as a teacher, I can reopen comments that I have made, and students can reopen their comments if they need to do that. And so really quick in the chat, I noticed a question somebody was asking about raising a hand, and I don't know if anybody was able to answer that yet.
There's also a question about Google Classroom and what this looks like in sharing with Google Classroom.
Yes, perfect. That's what we're going to do next, actually. So I'm going to jump in one of my Google Classroom practice classes and sort of show you what that looks like.
Hey, Sadie,
Yes.
there was a question. Could you go back to the slides? What happens if all of the slides are taken? How can you make your own slide that looks like the other ones? Like what if there are
Gotcha.
no slides?
Yes. So what I did ahead of time is I kind of knew I was really only going to have DLCs join this particular slide deck and maybe a few other people if they wanted to join in from the meet from Lunch and Learn. So I pre-made slides. So I took one of the templates. I'm just going to click on slide 37. You can right click on it and click copy. And then just anywhere on that side, you can click paste. And so what it does is it pastes that entire slide. So what I need to do is say, if I'm sharing this with my 7th graders, and I know I have 32 7th graders in my class, I'm going to want to make at least 32 of those slides, usually a couple more. Because what happens is sometimes even a kid is, you know, deleting, they're like, oh, wait, I don't like my picture, but they actually accidentally deleted the whole slide. Right? They might need a new one. Another thing that it's important to teach students about this, and this might be a good time to jump in with that, is to teach them about the undo button so that when I see I've made a mistake or something is gone that I thought should have been there, I can click that undo button and it brings it right back. Another trick is to press Control on your keyboard and the letter Z. And so I'm going to demonstrate that. Let's delete my slide by mistake. And I can just quickly press Control Z on my keyboard and now my slide is back, right? Or if I mistakenly deleted my picture and I didn't want to retake that, I can just do a quick Control Z or the undo button and it's right back. All right. So I'll let everybody catch their breath. That was a lot. Okay, so we are going to jump into Google Classroom really quickly, and I'm going to show you how to add a slide like that as an assignment. And so you can add it as a material as well. It just depends on if you want to grade something or not, and as a full assignment and give feedback. But I'm going to click Create and Assignment. And so I'm going to give this a quick title. And this part is where I will give my directions to students. And you want to be as specific as you can about that. And then I'm going to click the Add button. And Jackie, I see you have a question. Go ahead, if you would, and unmute really quick and ask that question.
You may cover this later, but I was wondering if you had a slideshow and for example, you had a book club and you're reading a book and you wanted to ask questions and you wanted in your slide to make the questions locked, but then still make it available for students to write their comments below the questions. Is there a way to lock the slide in place, but allow students to have the editing right?
There are a couple of options, Jackie. So I'm going to have Jenny and Tanya table that question for just a few moments.
Okay.
And after we create this assignment, we'll look at that because there are a couple options depending on what parts you want locked.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Okay, so we are in our assignment. We've got our title and our directions. And so now we need to go find our slide deck from our Google Drive. So I'm going to click the paperclip for add, and then I'm going to select Google Drive. And then I'm going to go find that particular slide that I'm looking for. And so I'm actually going to grab my Lunch and Learn slideshow, my slide deck, and I'm going to select add. And so it defaults in my Google Classroom to where students can view the file, right? If we want students to actually type and edit these slides, I don't want it to say view file. I need to click that drop down arrow and select students can edit the file. That means every student that receives this particular assignment can edit that slide. So if you're doing a slide deck that's just content and teaching, you probably don't want them to edit, right? So in that instance, you would click students can view the file. But for this one, we want to make sure everyone can edit, okay? And then we would decide, okay, which Google Classrooms, I would check mark all of the Google Classrooms that I want to receive that assignment if I'm collaborating with my team. I can decide if I want a group of only maybe 5 students to receive that slide because I'm individualizing their instruction and their slide is a little bit different from some of the other students in the class. So I can go in and check mark who's going to receive that or if all of my students will receive it. I can decide on my points. I can add a due date and I can choose a topic of where I want that to go. And then I can click the assign button when I'm ready. And so once I've clicked that, and we'll watch the magic happen, and it shows up right here, lunch and learn example. And so when my students click to view the assignment, they will see the instructions and they'll have a link. They just click on that and they can go in and begin editing. All right, and so that's kind of how we assign that in Google Classroom.
Sadie, let me make sure that this question was answered in that I didn't write down who answered it, but if I provide a copy from my deck to each student in Google Classroom and provide them with edit access, can they change other students' slide deck? We might need clarification on that. Is that if you assign every their own copy or just one? So that was a question that had come in.
Yeah, so when you select, let me jump back in here. So let me try to edit my assignment really quick. So when we're here and we select students can edit a file, that means students can edit anything in that slide deck. And so that's why we mentioned earlier, it's really important to make sure you go over procedures and set very clear expectations and sometimes even consequences, because it's just like in the classroom, right? If you have students sitting next to each other and they're messing up somebody's work that they're doing on their desk, it's the same kind of thing. We need to have different procedures and protocols in place to make sure students are kind of following along. And you can always, take privileges away from students where you don't get to join this slide deck next time. You're going to get your own next time. So you kind of have to think about those things ahead of time. But yes, they can edit any slide and they could change someone else's work. And so that's where you need those procedures in place.
Could you talk about the difference in the making a copy, that last option?
Yes, absolutely. So, and it's, for some reason it's not, because I've already created this assignment. So I'm going to close this really quick and I'm going to go back to my classroom. So there might be times where you want the slide deck to not be collaborative by a large group of students, but you still want them to edit the slide deck. And so that might be something, I've got a little example we're going to look at shortly, and it's sorting and labeling. And so here's where students are going to sort words by their ending sounds, right? And so maybe I don't want the whole class editing, but I still want an individual student to be able to edit that slide. And so I don't want to make 20 some copies of that slide and then assign to each student. So what Google Classroom does is in the Classroom tab of Google Classroom, I'm going to select Create Assignment again. And of course, I will name my assignment. I will add my directions for students along with any expectations that I have and things that they need to remember. I'm going to select Add with the paperclip and then select Google Drive. And so once my Google Drive opens, I'll find that slide deck. I can search the name, I can navigate through my drive and find it. And once I select it, it'll be highlighted in blue and I'm going to select Add. And so what Jenny was just mentioning, I can select make a copy for each student. And when I select that, it's just like me going to the copy machine, putting my one printed packet on the copier and then running a copy of 20 sets for all 20 students, right? And so that gives every single student a copy of that slide deck. So they can still edit if I have my share settings correct in my slide deck, but they will each get their own copy. And so what you have to do as a backup procedure, sort of, before you completely assign that, is in the slide deck, before you post that in Google Classroom, you click that yellow share button. And right now, when my students get that copy, they're all only going to be able to view that. So I need to change that so that they can edit when they get the slide and then say done. And so now when I go back to my classroom and I get make a copy for each student, that means every student will get their own copy of that slide deck and they will be able to edit that. And then when you're ready, you just click assign. All right, does that help answer that question? Feel free to jump in and say, hey, I still don't get it, or yes, I get it. Perfect. And so I'm going to jump back to our other slide deck and just let you know, for those of you, if there's anyone out there using Canvas, I feel like most of our people I've seen are middle school and elementary. I don't think I've seen a lot of high school, but for those of you that are using Canvas, there are directions on this hyperlink on slide 3 that talk about how to, it's a template that you can push out to students. You would just copy the hyperlink of your own slide deck and paste in there, and you can actually use that to assign to your Canvas classroom. And so for time, we're just gonna make sure that you're aware of that. And if anybody needs that demonstrated, we can do that sort of at the end. All right, so I'm gonna jump back to my tips and make sure we're covering everything. So we've talked about using Control-Z or undo. So when students delete their stuff or somebody else's stuff, they need to make sure they undo. But one thing we haven't mentioned is a good idea is when you have a collaborative slide deck, you can actually go in and color code your slides. So when we said I have 20 students in my class, I need to make sure I have 20 copies of that template, right? Or 20 slides so that they can edit. You can color code those and say, okay, group 1, you need to edit the pink slide. Group 2, you need to edit the purple slide. Group 3, you're going to edit the blue slide. And so that's one strategy to help students make sure they're in the right place. If you have class numbers and you have 32 students and they're all numbered 1 through 32, you can say, hey, use your class number, go to the slide that matches your number, and make sure that you're only editing your slide. And you could even label with first names and put Sadie's slide is here, Jenny's slide is here, Tanya's slide is here, and so on, and kind of give that little prompting if you need to. We talked about the comment feature. All right. And so another little trick is to have an original copy. So before I give students editing access, I always make sure that I keep a good copy in my Google Drive so that no one is editing that one. So that I have 2 copies, one that my student's going to edit and one is my original, because you just never know when things are going to go awry and someone has sort of messed up your slide deck. So then you never have a copy and you have to start it all over. So that's a really good practice, is to have and label it in your file, just original Lunch and Learn collaborative slide deck, right? And then when I go share one with my students, it's going to be copy of, right? Or the 2020 edition, you know, just give it really specific names so that your original doesn't get edited. Okay. Are there any questions?
We had a question about the ability to lock specific slides.
Yes. Okay. So, and that question, I think we need a little bit of clarification, but I think that was Jackie, right? So if it depends, right? So if I just don't want them to lock my background. So right now, if I shared this particular sorting slide deck with students, they can edit everything, right? They can go in and change this to their name. They can do all sorts of things. And so maybe I don't want them to edit that part. I want to lock that down so they can only move the pictures, right? Or label things. I have some other examples, like if you want them to label right now, they can move the picture, they can move everything. And so speaking to that, if we want to lock it, yes, we can lock parts of it. And then remind me, Jenny and Tanya, to make sure I talk about sharing it so that students can just comment on things versus editing the whole slide deck. And I'll do that next. All right, so what I can do is I can actually take this particular slide. I'm gonna just do a copy and a paste really quick so that I have 2 copies, and I'm gonna clean up and kind of move these off of the page for a moment So I'm just going to delete these pictures because what I want to do is create a background on my slide so that students can't edit these things that I don't want them to edit, right? So to do that, I'm going to select File, Download, and then I can either select JPEG of my current slide or a PNG, and both of those are image files. So I prefer PNG just because that's what I prefer. So I'm going to select PNG, no rhyme or reason. And what I can do is I can come in and insert a blank slide underneath. And so now I'm going to click and drag. You'll see it down in the bottom left corner is where it put that image of the slide. I can do a couple things. I can just drag and drop it. And so it's here now, right? But they can still move the whole thing, but at least they can't edit, you know, the text and the line that are on there, and they can't do anything with that part. So that's one option. But if that's not going to work for you, I'm going to delete that. I can go to my blank slide and I'm going to click background and change background. And then I'm going to select choose image. All right, and I'm going to select upload, or I can drag. If it's right here in your bottom of your browser, I can click and drag and drop it. And so when I click done, you'll notice I can't click or edit anything, right? It's there. And so now I can go back to this slide, slide 2, and delete that. And I'm going to jump in here and grab these images. I'm going to cut and paste them up here. And I'm going to cut those and go back to slide 2 and paste those and delete slide 3 now. And so now you can see I can't click, my students can't click, no one can click and move that. They can only move these pictures, right? And so in that sense, Jackie and everyone, that's locking things down. And so that's one way you can lock things. All right, any questions about that part? Oh, perfect, Jackie. I see your thumbs up. Awesome. And so there's another way you can share things. Oh, Melanie, quickly, go ahead. I see you have your hand raised. Thank you.
Yeah, so Sadie, I didn't know if you were going to jump into master slides, but master slides is also a really nice way to lock down the options that students have when they're adding different layouts. And I know a teacher earlier asked, how can I make it, if all the slides are taken and I want to add a new slide, how can I do that? So instead of doing the copy paste, you could create a master slide, and that would be the option for the student to choose.
Yes, perfect, Melody. And that's something that I don't ever use. And I would fumble through a little bit of using a master slide because I don't often need to do that. But Melanie, do you have a quick directions that you can share with that? And if not, after I demonstrate this other thing, I might have you screen share and show that really quick if anybody needs that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. All right. So the other way to share if you want things sort of locked down is when I click, sorry, I clicked it before I said that. If you click this yellow share button on your slide deck and you select the drop down arrow for how you're sharing, you can go here to where it says more and see all of your options. And so what I want to do is make sure that anyone with a link can make comments. And so right now it says anyone in Wake County can edit. So if I change that, I can select the drop down arrow and click can comment and save. And so now when I share that link out, I can actually give you a version that you can look at, but the only thing you can do is use that comment bubble. And so when you're talking about doing a book club, that might be another option that you want. There's one question per slide, and all of the students go in and they just click comment and add their comments or their responses to those questions. And I'm not sure that there was any other ways I could think of that you could sort of lock things down so that people couldn't edit parts, but could still add some things. Can anybody else?
Tanya brought up a good point in the chat that the things that are in the margins are hidden from present view. So they wouldn't show up until you actually drag them onto that white screen.
Ah, yes, good point. Yeah, let me just show that in present mode. And so right now you can only see the ball and the log, right? But when I'm not in present mode, it's sort of a nice little way. Here's fall. right? And so you can sort of put those on there, and that changes your view of how you're seeing things. Yeah, thank you, Tanya. All right, any other questions? And go ahead, if one of you would, is add the bit.ly again, and you may have already added it just for anybody that's joined us late. I saw a couple numbers changing on there. So just add the bit.ly to the slide deck for today so that everyone can access that. Thanks, Jenny. All right, so we were getting back to, I think we've got everything, right?
So we have a question about how to make images move.
Oh, so as in an animated image or just to be able to drag them on around on the screen? Can you clarify that? Let's see.
How to drag them.
How to drag them. Thank you, Christine. So really the only thing you have to do when you're ready, anything you add to your slide deck can be moved unless it's a background, which we made this all OG T-chart. We made that a background, so that can't be moved. But anything else you add, if you add a text box, you just click and drag. And so maybe it's a label and you want students to move the label around. And so maybe it's a label for the word ball, or maybe I should have written log, but there's a label for log and they drag it to the picture. You can drag and move that anywhere on the screen as soon as you add it. And the same goes for an image. If I select insert image, I can either select to take a picture of myself with the camera or an image if I have a cup or something I want to take a picture of. My favorite is, instead of adding something, because I usually don't have a lot of pictures saved to my Google Drive or my Google Photos, I can go up to search the web, which is my favorite thing. And so I'm going to choose a picture of a dog to add to my OG pictures here. And so what happens is Google filters a search, and of course it's not completely 100% safe, but it's safer than just going to Google and typing something in. So it provides a little bit of a filtered search, and so I can scroll through and find an image. And when I find an image that I want to use, I can simply select the image one time. It puts a little blue circle with a check mark, and I can click insert. And as soon as I do that, it puts, oh, something weird happened. Okay, let me try that one more time. I'm not sure. I've never had that message before. Let's try it again. Insert. Unable to create some images. I don't know why it's doing that. Let me try a different image. All right, let's see. Let's add another picture of a little dog. Check mark and insert. There it goes. I'm not sure why that other picture wasn't working, but so now the picture is on my slide deck and you can move it anywhere on the page that you want, and students will be able to move that as well because it's not part of that background. Yes, and so Christine, does that help a little bit? You can do the same thing with shapes. If you had a T-chart where it's like, how's everyone feeling today, right? Are we feeling nervous or are we feeling happy? And so you can go in and just add several little circles. You can make those a little bit more colorful. And then you could have a whole set of, if you have 25 students, 25 circles, and they each grab a circle and they say, oh, I'm feeling happy today, right? Or maybe I'm feeling nervous today. And so they go in and just move their little shape, and you have a quick visual of how everyone's doing today, right? Or do you still need help with this math concept? A quick yes, no. Everybody can drag their little dot and it's sort of anonymous, other than when people can see that happening live. They might see a bubble of who's there, but you can sort of gauge things that way.
So Sadie, Stephen has a question about how to make links to have users jump to different slides.
Ah, that's so fun. Okay, let me jump back down here. Let's go to this slide. So what I want to do is, once students have completed it, maybe I have a slide later in the slide deck that has like the answers. Like once you've labeled, my directions on this slide might say like, once you've labeled the picture, please click this link to see if you got the answers correct, right? And so what I can do is I can I'm going to add a little image here of a button. I'm just going to type this little shape, enter that, and say click me. All right, and hopefully everybody can see that because it's not in present mode, so it's kind of small. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so I've created just a simple shape, and you can do the same thing with text or pictures. And so maybe you can see every time you see the house, it'll take you back to the home slide of the slide deck, right? There's different little tricks that you can use, but once you've selected it and you see it has the handlebars on there, you can select insert a link and then click slides in this presentation. And so maybe I want it to go back to the first slide. Oops, excuse me, I just clicked it wrong. All right, and so slides in this presentation, first slide. Once you do that, you click apply. Okay, so the other thing, and I think it was Steve that had a question, was that right? About linking. So another thing you can do is link out to a website. And so maybe I want this one to go to either a YouTube video or a Discovery Ed video, or maybe to, you know, just a Scholastic article. So what you can do as well is click in this, make sure you have your handlebars, excuse me, click the insert link icon, and you can even type in a web address or copy and paste a web address. And so once you click apply, whoops, it looks like I forgot my slash marks. There we go. Lord, here we go. Hold on, I'll get it right, everybody. There we go. Okay, apply. So now it's going to take me out to a website, right? So you can do the same thing. You can either hyperlink out to different websites or other slide decks, or you can do like this one and redirect it right to something in your slide deck. Yeah, that's a great question. Those are fun. That's how you create some choose your own adventure stuff.
We've also had the request to go back to the master slides. So if, oh, also good point, you can hyperlink to another Google Doc.
Yes.
There was a question at the very beginning. Someone was interested in embedding a Google form. This could be a way that you could link your slideshow to a Google form and have that them accessible through each other.
Yes, perfect. So we actually have done that on the master slide. Let me show you. So if you have to jump out early, because I know we're getting towards the end of our lunch hour, but if everyone can see on my slide deck, hopefully it's going to pop up here in full screen, but we have a hyperlink that takes you to a Google form on the very last slide. And so when you click that link, I'm going to show you what happens. It opens straight to a Google form. And so I'm going to, I promise I won't change this DLCs, but I'm going to click edit just because it's the fastest example. When you're in your Google form, right, you're in your teacher mode and you can see it, you're going to select the send button. And then you're going to select this little link icon. And so you're going to copy that link. So I'm copying the send version, the version that my students will fill out or my participants will fill out. And then I'm going to go back to my slide deck. And I'm going to put it on this one just so I can show you a quick example. Okay, so I'm going to say now that you've gone through all of my video tutorials and you've completed all of the content, I want you to complete this quiz, right? I'm going to make that font a little bit bigger for everybody to see. Okay, and so what I can do is I can actually highlight the text, this quiz. And so once I have it highlighted, I'm going to again click that little insert link icon. And remember, a few moments ago, I clicked that send link and I said copy it. So it's still in my virtual clipboard. It's sort of hidden back there. And so I'm going to right click and paste. And so now you can see that URL is there and I'm going to select apply. And so once I do that, the text becomes a hyperlink. And so now when my students are on that slide, they can click and it will take them directly to that Google form. And so when it's not in present mode, I want you to notice, let me jump back. When it's not in present mode, it's a little tricky. Students have to click it once, and then a little bar pops up at the bottom. They're going to have to select that before they can get there, right? But if I'm in present mode, notice it's just a single click. So it functions slightly differently. And it took me to, there it is. And so now I can just, a single click opens it. So it will depend on if students are in presentation mode or if they're just looking at your slide deck and how they actually click on that hyperlink to get to the Google form. But that's an awesome strategy.
Right, Sadie, I've got a question too. I know you've got a whole presentation too, but I promised this early on that I would make sure I logged this question and had it answered. Videos, can videos now be added to Google Slides?
Oh, yes. Yay. Yes, it can be. And so let me jump in and show you. So on my slide, and the DLCs laugh because I'm loud and proud about where I grew up. So let's say on my slide, I want to tell you that I'm from West Virginia and I was born and raised there. And I want to share a video about West Virginia because it's my most favorite place. I can select insert video. And so I can either search YouTube, and I will caution you that if you use this method, to make sure before you select a video that you preview the entire thing before you just stick it on your slide deck. Because you might watch the first minute and you're like, yeah, that's a great video. And then it's really not. And so what you'll do is you can either go to YouTube, find the specific video that you want and link it there. Right? Or you can search right here within my Google slide deck. I'm going to select it, have it outline in blue, and I'm going to select the word select. Right? And so what happens is it pops that YouTube video right on my Google slide. And so it'll give me an option over here on the right where I can even give it a start and end time. So I've noticed some teachers are using instructional videos that were not created by their team. And so at the beginning, they're like, hi, I'm Miss So-and-so, but the kids don't know that person, right? So if you want to take out the first 10 seconds of the slide, you can say, I want to start that video at 10 seconds. And I don't want them to subscribe to that teacher's YouTube channel. So I'm going to end that video at 3 minutes and 5 seconds instead of 19 seconds. And so you can sort of edit that so that it will play and stop in the right parts of that YouTube video. And so another option, if you have created your own, let's say you've been making screencasts with Screencastify or Screencast-O-Matic, and you have those instructional videos and you've used your whiteboard, virtual apps, and you're ready to put a video in, you can actually select the same thing, insert video. And this time, instead of searching on YouTube or pasting a YouTube link, you can search your Google Drive for your Screencastify folder or your Screencast-O-Matic videos, however. And once you search, you can find your video and select. And so what that will do is put your video from your Google Drive right on that slide deck as well. And so then you can, again, change your start and end times. There's some other things you can mute the audio. That might be a great strategy if you're just saying, what do you notice? And it's a video from Discovery Ed that you've downloaded and you are watching an animal in its habitat, but you don't want audio, right? Because you just want students to observe and see and then give feedback on what they noticed. You can always have it mute the audio automatically and play around with some of those features. And that is inserting videos.
So Sadie, we have a couple questions in the chat that I'm noticing. One is about pre-made activities, and we do have some of those on our original slide deck.
Yes. Okay.
Here is another question about making objects fly in.
Oh, fun. That's exciting too. Yes, you can actually on a slide deck, and that feature you may or may not want to use because if your students aren't really clicking through in presentation mode, if you're not telling them to go to presentation mode, it's not going to be as exciting to see that. But if you have some text, you can just go in and format. There are 3 dots and I can click animate. So once I've selected something, I can go in and animate that so that it will move. here we go. Right here's fade in. I have some options to fade in, fly in from the top, bottom. So you can do that with any picture or any text. And so I want to get back really quick to somebody who was asking about templates. Oh, hey, Stephanie. Woo, woo, John Denver. I just saw that in the chat feature. So I'm going to bring you back really quickly to, because we're about out of time, but I want to make sure you see some examples. We have provided in the slide deck some examples of some collaborative Google slide decks that you are welcome to just jump in, make a copy, and share those with your students as appropriate, or even with your staff. If you're an administrator and you want to do some activities with your staff, you can use these, but they're all hyperlinks. So for this example, class check-in, if you just click that one time and click the hyperlink to it, it will open up the slide deck. And so what you can do is you can click File, make a copy, and you can either choose the entire presentation or just parts of it that you like, and make a copy for your Google Drive. And so they're just some fun examples. They include the directions for the participants, and then an example and some other slides. So that way you can just borrow those. And those are some great templates that you'll have options for. There's the inclusion activities. And here's some subject areas. If you're a second grade teacher, here's the secret world of pollinators, and that you can assign to groups and they can go in and fill that out. There's lots of different examples that I would love for you all to look at. And even some reflection slides that students can fill out as well. And those are a lot of the Discovery Ed SOS strategies. And so someone has Tech Tips 411. They've created these virtual slide decks so students can complete those without the need to be face-to-face. And so all those examples are there for you to click on, make copies of, and use. Another good strategy is just to Google like templates for Google slide decks. Of course, please reach out to your DLC if you need some templates. We all have some in Google Drive folders and things that we keep tucked away for when people need those. So reach out to your DLC if you need those too.
Melanie, are you ready to demo what it means to edit the master slides?
Sure.
Awesome.
If you can bear with me with my children all making lunch at the same time.
That's okay. You'll probably hear Wade in the background running back and forth down the hall.
Yeah, so I would not put the hat on saying I'm the expert on master slides. My partner Barb, I'm sure, is in here and she can jump in as well. But I'm going to share my screen and just show you a few things to use with the master slides. So let me get over here. All right, so master slides. With any Google slide presentation, you start out with a theme. So when you open up, this is the this is one of the slide decks we use today. I'll just go to this blank untitled presentation. Notice over here on the right are my themes. And typically the simple light theme is like the default theme that opens up. And when I'm mentioning themes, when I click on adding any new slides, so I'm over here and I click on this little pull down menu, here are all my layouts that go with that simple light theme. But if I don't want all these layouts and I want to make it very specific, so I just want one slide to show up for my students to choose from, I can change the master slides. And to do that, I would go to View, Master. There's a couple ways to get there. This is one way, View and Master. And now I have my master slide here at the top. And here are all these layouts. And these are the layouts that you just saw that were my choices when I'm creating a slideshow. So I can edit any of these slides right here. So I can, let's say I don't want all of these options because my students are collaborating and I just really want them to have just maybe 1, 2, or 3 options. I can just click on all of these. I could delete every single one of these. And then I could create a slide that I wanted to choose, I wanted my kids to choose from. So if this was my slide here, I could do a text box. This could be, enter your name, something like this. Then when I'm over here in my slides, I choose my new slides. Now I only have two options, my title slide and this blank one that says enter my name. Okay, so that's already built in. So underneath, maybe a student would enter their name. So I made a copy of the Lunch and Learn one, and I went in and I created my new master slides so that I now just have 3 different options. So if my students were then back in my slideshow and I am student number 5 and I wanted to create a new slide, I can then go up to my layouts and choose the layout from my master slides. I think that's
Awesome. Thank you, Melanie.
to add for that. And I'll just put in a quick link. It's not a screencast that I created, but just a simple link of that I Googled, and you guys can just follow that one as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melanie.
Sure.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that so much. All right. Can everybody see the Google Slide resources page here?
You're good.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. All right, so and Melanie just popped some directions there in the chat. Thank you so much, Melanie. Some other resources, and we can actually, Melanie, if you would, when you have time, go in and pop that, or Tanya, maybe even, or Jenny, if you can just take the link that Melanie just shared and add it to the bottom of the slide that I'm showing right now as another resource for everyone. That would be fantastic. So really quick, there's a couple of a Google Slides cheat sheet. You can share that for people who are just starting out with Google Slides. There are 2 kite courses. You'll see the little kite icons at the beginning of those, and you can get some digital learning credits for those. So those 2 links will teach you more about Google Slides. And then of course, there are just some other links that have some video and text tutorials that you can go through to help you with some collaborative Google Slide ideas. And of course, at the bottom of the page, let me hide this. There's a link to the DLC website. So please feel free at any time to email your DLC or email a DLC and we can get you to the right one. But please let us know if you have any questions. And then the bit.ly is on that last slide. It's bit.ly/DLC LLFS for Lunch and Learn feedback survey. We would love you to fill that out so that we can continue to provide the things that you need and improve ourselves as DLCs to make sure we're helping you in the best way we can. And so we would appreciate that. And they'll drop that in the chat window as well. And so as people are heading out, I can stay for a couple more minutes. If we didn't get any questions that needed answered, please feel free to ask those. And thank you all so much for being here and sticking with us on your lunch break. And hopefully you've learned some fun things that you can do. Thanks, Melanie. I see your little clapping. Yes, and thank you all for being a great audience. This was fantastic.